and our representatives can choose the best options. And it's that fundamental underlying competence-confidence equation that I think we have to build a sort of wise patience with the way that nations in the world have to conduct their business. And that also goes along for the questions of how prosperous and independent Scotland is going to be eventually after an opening 3 to 4 to 5 years of basic stability and rewiring the country, but not necessarily leaping forward. I think we have to develop a kind of a strength in the citizenry and a patience for the adult behaviour of an independent nation in a complex, demanding world. If we can get to work on that as much as anything else over the next 2 years, I think we'll be able to make the right decision, and we'll get a yes majority that is intellectually as robust as it might be populist robust. I think if we can get to an intelligence about independence, general mass intelligence about independence, and the seriousness of the options before us, I think we will genuinely have won a decent referendum.
But that obviously entails getting a lot of information out there and not allowing it to be not allowing the whole thing to be presented as sort of Sturgeon versus May, or it was Salmond versus the establishment. And we have to be clear that there's a lot more going on here. But I think most people understand there's a lot more going on here. But like you said, it needs to be option A, B, C, D. It can't just be allowed to be Sturgeon versus them.
I also think it has to be a high-level discussion. I mean, we're beginning to get a lot of very welcome signals from, German politicians and Spanish politicians and Scandinavian politicians that they can see what a turn towards progress, a yes vote in Scotland in the Brexit context would actually be. I think we should remember to stay on the high road and to make this the idealistic progressive beacon argument of this as strong, if not stronger, than it's ever been. I think there's a way in which a lot of the discussion about the electoral and referendum tactics coming up are about how do we defeat this infernal conjunction of big data and psychometrics, which is what the polling company Cambridge Analytica are always claiming that help them to help Trump and Brexit win their majorities. I think one of the ways you can address that is actually by appealing to the better angels of people's natures rather than the worst. The emotional repertoire of our everyday citizen is not just fear and loathing and anxiety and panic. It can also be, can I be involved in building a better society? Can I do it with the people that I see around about me that I recognise? Can we look at each other and trust that we can take this Scotland forward, that we own, that is ours, so what do we do with it? I genuinely think that the SNP leadership definitely get that. But I think a big story of the next couple of years is going to be the way that large parts of the progressive world would welcome the case for Scottish independence. I think in the way that global events or global brands or global phenomena have an impact on every small part of the world, I think the world talking idealistically about Scottish independence is going to really have an effect on the people who will bring about into Scottish independence, which will be the voters. So I think we've got to take the high road as much as we possibly can.
An interesting factor there is that when it was the last referendum, Cameron went round the world calling in favours to get various leaders to speak out against Scottish independence, but I think Brexit's destroyed a fair amount of goodwill, and I don't think Theresa May can count on people backing her up this time.
That's a signal advantage for the independence campaign this time round. I mean, we need to do soft power, cultural and political geopolitics from the get-go. We need to, and I know that's been understood. I think maybe culture and arts could maybe help with this as well. I remember Kenny Farquharson, our mutual bête no doubt, but actually quite a complicated thinker on all this. Towards the absolute dog days of the Brexit campaign, he put out a tweet saying, "I wish we had more wish trees in the European referendum campaign." And what he was referring back to was National Collective, the universally derided, wish trees that they set up in town centres, softly and gently, urging people to write up their aspirations for independence and stick them on a label and hang them from a branch. But what Kenny was saying there was, there's something globally admirable about the universalism and the non-exclusivism and the visions of a good society that were encoded at the heart of the Yes campaign. I think one of the things we must try and do, and this is a sort of a classic musician's perspective, which is if you do something good in the past, you don't just abandon it, you recycle it and build on it for the future, So that the riff of the progressive beacon of the Scotland being the best it can be is something that we should amplify and build on, and we have an absolutely global audience for it at the moment. And I think I wish and hope that that's going to be the strategy. I think cultural people can really take that forward. See if we can activate Ewan McGregor from his recent comments in Hollywood and get him to do a prawn cocktail drive around Beverly Hills. That would be quite good.
But meanwhile, while we are doing that, the other side of the battle, shall we say, or I don't like the word battle, the other side of the
altercation.
Yes. The other side of this. It has been, although they're sort of trying to deny the referendum at the moment, or trying to block the referendum at the moment, groups such as Scotland and Union have been feverishly raising money. And from some rather unwholesome types, actually, which happened last time as well. But, so we are worrying about strategy and etc. They're already putting a lot of money in the bank for their campaign. So what do you think we can expect from them?
Well, as I say, I think they think, I would say hubristically, but maybe that's premature, that they have a winning formula, and that the winning formula is this combination of big data and psychometrics that identifies particular voters in a very, very precise way, mobilises them with very precise messaging on their social media, and also is able to deactivate and demotivate people who they don't want to count and vote. Now, I'm told by many of my sort of friends in the currently amassing Yes campaign infrastructure that I am overestimating the power of these things, and that surely we can't just presume that everybody's a social media addict and is stuck to their screens and can be shifted one way or another by a sulphurous or an idealistic image. I think that's premature. And I think that's a bit naive. And I'm sure much of the money that's been raised by Scotland and Union is going precisely into identifying primal triggers and hooking that up to people in particular, very, very precise socioeconomic circumstances. And I'm not just going to get one set of messages to them, closer to a date. They're going to be working on a long-term mood shift campaign. And I think they're coordinating it already. I quite agree with you. And I think we need to get off our backsides now. The question is, it's being done. I know the people that are doing it. I know what they're getting on with, and I know that if people have bemoaned the lack of a critique of the Yes campaign in the last 2 years, we had Joe Pike's book on Project Fair, but we haven't had an equivalent book on Yes Scotland. I know from the discussions that are happening that those serious questions are being asked. Those serious deficiencies in the campaign the last time are being identified. I mean, for example, I heard the other day that there was not a very, very precise level of identification of particular voter segments done by Yes Scotland, which seems absolutely outrageous that it wasn't done, but I'm told that it wasn't done. So, I think we can learn from our mistakes, but I think we have to get moving. I think the SNP have stolen the jump on massive sort of fundraising deadlines. I mean, they've had the refs.scot website ready to go and clearly ready to go for Nicola's announcements. So that's excellent, straight ahead planning. But I'm sure the SNP know as much as anybody else that they have to have a non-SNP broad-based civic campaign that is able to talk to a variety of constituencies and a variety of voices. They know that, and I think we will see over the next couple of months a better relationship between the SNP and the Green Party and the wider movement structures that need to be built than existed between the SNP and Yes Scotland, which I can tell you from the inside was far too close, and I wasn't an SNP member, so I wasn't privy to much of the behind-the-scenes coordinations and machinations. But we need a more diverse and a more network-empowered movement that will have to figure out how to avail itself of the best and the hottest and most effective crowdfunding activities that it can. And I don't know, I'm not sure what the collection of high net worth individuals are that could be funding the next indie broad-based campaign. I guess people might go back to the wee years at some point, who knows. We do have a struggle on our hands, not in terms of perception of what to do. I think that's actually really sharp. But in terms of funding it, yeah, I think we've got to nail that one pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was going to get to that, because I mean, if you think about all the wonderful people involved in the Yes campaign that throw a fiver to this podcast or to Common Space or to Wings Over Scotland or whatever, and people give what they can, and it's wonderful. But, like, again, to go back to Scotland and Union, these are the kind of people that have a white tie dinner and they fling in 4 million by the end of the evening. And that's something that's very difficult to combat, but we have to think of a way.
It's very difficult to combat, and I think, we'll do our best, but we will not be able to match the level of investment that they will be able to get together. So we also already have to be thinking about ways to counter this big data and psychometrics model. And one way that we can do it is to get people to put their screens down and talk to other people and be with other people. So, I mean, this is just my theory, but I think that what National Collective did the last time in a sort of tentative, sort of exploratory, sort of not amateurish, pro-am kind of way, lots of wonderful performances and lots of wonderful events put on. But we need to multiply that by about 2 to 3 or 4. And there needs to be almost a kind of alternative social and cultural space that you invite people into to generally talk about the future of your country in a positive manner and embracing of the fact that people are nervous about independence, but they do want the best for Scotland. And I think that all that arts and conviviality and friendliness that was the hallmark of the Yestables and the National Collectives, I think that is our secret weapon, actually, against this kind of slightly matrix-like cybernetic Skynet digital campaigning model that the establishment think that they've nailed through Brexit and through Trump. I think we have to get people looking at each other, being with each other, and then social media just amplifies and captures that and sends people to the next meeting. And it's not a meeting; it's a celebration. We need to be celebrating as much as we possibly can. We need to be, we need to have humans looking at each other in real space and time, more than virtual space and time. But we use the virtual space and time to kind of drive people to be with their fellow Scots and enjoying their fellow Scots, but enjoying the idea of being able to talk about serious stuff, along with entertainment, along with food, along with drama, along with arts. That to me is something that the No side simply can't manage, and they simply can't match. I'm slightly scratching my head to think about how that gets going under the current resources and everybody's time constraints and everybody's freelance demands. But it's something that we have as an advantage. We'll have to figure out how to crank it up to another level, 2 or 3 times bigger than it was before.
Yeah. One of the things that might, on another note, apart from that individual level you're talking about, something we hinted at earlier on was, that certain parts of big capital will be in favour of Scottish independence this time.
That's right.
There's often the idea that lots of companies that are currently based in London after a hard Brexit might be tempted to relocate to Edinburgh. So do you think we'd be able to get some support from that direction this time?
Well, I would have thought so. My great pal in the world at the moment is Paul Mason, the writer and sort of left thinker, ex-Channel 4, wrote a fantastic book called Post-Capitalism. And he's been saying for a while that particularly in terms of Brexit, and he's very much thrilled to the Corbyn Labour Party, because he says the Labour Party is like an exoskeleton for the working class. It makes them 5 times more powerful than they otherwise would be. He's entitled to his idealism in that respect. In England, I think in Scotland we can maybe tell a different story, and he knows that. But one of the points he constantly makes is that liberal capitalists do not profit from the xenophobic, post-Brexit, protectionist, hard right nationalist world. They don't. That's absolutely against their material interests, and you can see that in the way that Silicon Valley is pirouetting and gyrating around about Trump's various demands, which starve them of new markets, which rob them of necessary talent, etc., etc. So I think that pertains as much in the UK and in Europe as it does in the US. There's a great fear on the left in Scotland that if independence is just sort of Blairism 2.0, our advantage is expressed by tickling the underbelly of 21st century capitalists to come and invest in a single market, integrated, fabulously stuffed with university graduates, super smart, super slick Scotland. That's something that we should resist from the get-go. I would call a wee bit more canny than that. And I think if you're a student of revolution in the last 2 or 3 centuries, and certainly in Europe, you would see an alliance between the working class